it's Zach
and Adrian
from Art of Transliness,
Yeah.
and we're doing a video on
overcompensation. So just with our
overcompensating in our lives for being transgender.
Yeah.
So you had an interesting.
I was thinking about how I was making choices in my life concerning my career path, and how I had previously gone to college and had sat the MCAT and had pretty much gone the whole 9 yards to go to medical school, and then I had to think about it for a second and realized that one of the large reasons why I was considering this as an option for a professional career was because I felt like it would make up for the fact that I was trans, and it would prove to my family and friends that I could overcome this burden and become something great. And in my mind it was, well, you have to be a doctor, you have to become one of the, be a part of one of the most competitive processes in the country.
Yeah, I didn't feel that pressure in my career as much. Like, I'm just doing pretty much what I was going to do. I've always wanted to do just because I want to do it. But I definitely feel that pressure in relationships, being the best boyfriend ever, or the best fiance or husband or whatever, because there's this idea that whoever I'm with is doing me a favor by being with me. It's not just like, I don't know, I have to be extra special to make up for it, which is kind of like what you're talking about, having to make up, in general, feeling like you have to make up for it. I also feel that way with masculinity in general, feeling like I have to overcompensate, that I can't come off as too feminine because then people will suspect, and of course, or that they'll attribute it to, like, oh, he's trans, so of course he does that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course he doesn't drink beer because he's trans, or doesn't know about sports because he's trans. It's like, that's not actually how things are. So I feel like I have to overcompensate by being, knowing about cars, knowing about sports, knowing about beer, because that's like what men do, and I have to hold myself to like the highest standard of masculinity, which is really unfair, I think.
Right, it is super unfair. And like, honestly, sometimes I think that we're our like hardest critic, our toughest critic, and maybe we're just projecting. But ultimately, when you consider yourself in the world and how you're making decisions, and you're trying to like make up for something because you think that you're lacking in something, whether it's your masculinity, your intelligence, how good of a partner you are, or how good of a sibling you are, or a son, it's like a really toxic way to think about your identity at all, like in general.
Yeah, because it's basically like saying that you're in a way telling yourself you're less than because you're trans. But like, I think it's internalizing how other people view you, because there's so many times where I've been worried, like, oh, people are going to think that I failed because I was trans or something, and or it's, we broke up because of me or something,
Right.
And
all of your shortcomings are because you're trans, and any of your triumphs are in spite of,
which is really unfair, because I don't think that at this point in my life it relates to that many things that much. I mean, obviously it didn't really relate to how well you did on the MCAT,
right?
Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like anything else.
It's just like puts you in a really bad mental space to like be conceptualizing your identity that way, or to be like striving for certain things and have that be like your motivation for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to take a step back from that and realize that like I need to do what makes me happy, and that's so just, everyone says that and you hear that a lot, but it is something definitely to work towards, and not let those kinds of feelings and emotions like dictate where you're moving and what you're doing and how you're dressing and who you're dating and how you're interacting with people.
People say be yourself and live for yourself, and those are just like cliches, but they're true. Like, I mean, you should. It's easier said than done, but it's definitely something to move toward, because in so many ways, I think you feel like, well, I'm doing this for myself, I have to do everything else for everybody else. But you really need to be who you actually are, which might be someone who doesn't want to go to medical school, or
Right.
someone who doesn't want to, know about beer and sports. Like,
Right,
there are
and you
all
have to
these
make those
decisions you have to
decisions.
make.
Yeah, and they're hard. They're not easy, and like it was really difficult to try to figure out like what were my motivations for doing the things that I was doing, and now I still feel like like was that the right choice? Like, how does this all work? But ultimately, moving towards an authentic self like begs those kinds of questions. It's hard to answer. Sometimes you don't want to answer them. You don't even want to know the answer. And but if you're actually going to move down a path towards a more authentic self, you need to think about it and like you need to address it, because you're still not being totally authentic if you're letting those things motivate you. And it's also just like internalized transphobia that's like really toxic, and you're not doing them any favors, especially yourself, if you're harboring those types of feelings. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's very philosophical, I guess. Deep talks with Zach and Adrian.
Yeah. I do know how to read.
Yeah.